For the first time since 2019, the Boston Bruins and Toronto Maple Leafs will square off in round one of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But before we look ahead to that, we have to look back at this regular season and talk about just how impressive the Bruins' performance was.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day every single day. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first ticket purchase to your next event. All right, the Bruins lost their final two games of the regular season, 3 of 4 overall, and fell to second place in the Atlantic Division, and they will now match up against the Toronto Maple Leafs in round one of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Before we talk about that, though, we have to look back at the past 82 games, the expectations for this club coming into this season, and just how remarkable it is that they're even in this position. Before we get into that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. Now, the Bruins did indeed have a chance to secure first place in the Atlantic Division with a win last night. They fell to the Ottawa Senators. This was a night after being shut out by the Washington Capitals. The Panthers beat the Toronto Maple Leafs and moved up to 110 points, one ahead of the Bruins, putting the Bruins down in second. And that sets up a first-round meeting between the Bruins and the Maple Leafs. The Florida Panthers will take on the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Rangers, who finished tops in the conference, will get the Washington Capitals and their abysmal minus 37 goal differential. Now, it's easy to look at the last 3 games or last 4 games and be disappointed with how the Bruins finished this season. But they were playing 3 games in 4 days. They quite simply weren't going to go balls to the wall for games that really didn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. They had their playoff spot secured. They knew they were going to be in tough against whoever they play in round one, whether it be the Maple Leafs or the Lightning. They've had much better success against the Maple Leafs this season, going 4-0-0 against them, than Tampa, against whom they went 1-1-2. So it kind of worked out that way, although, always be careful for what you wish for. But let's look big picture. The Bruins went 47, 20, and 15 this season, a .665 point percentage, a plus 43 goal differential. And when you compare this team to last year's, one that set records for points, wins, won the President's Trophy, just an absolutely loaded roster, especially after the trade deadline. And you look at what the vision was coming into this season. It was meant to be a transition season. Patrice Bergeron retired. He certainly had enough gas left in the tank to play 1, maybe 2 more seasons. You lose him, you lose David Krejci, you trade away Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno. You don't re-sign Tyler Bertuzzi, Garnet Hathaway, Dmitry Orlov, and you bring in some players who kind of are a bit up there in terms of their game and their age. Kevin Shattenkirk, James Van Riemsdyk, Milan Lucic. We all know what happened there. You try to fill gaps with Danton Heinen, some younger guys like Matt Poitras, who got a look at a training camp and who played very well. Jesper Boqvist, Parker Wotherspoon. Like these guys, this was meant to be a transition year. They're going to have a ton of cap space this summer to load up and try to add more talent around the core of David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy. This year wasn't meant to be this successful. In fact, there were a lot of people who thought maybe this team will be a bubble team. Maybe they'll be a wild card team. Maybe they won't even make the playoffs. Like, how much will they miss Patrice Bergeron, especially? And look at what they accomplished. They still finished second in the Atlantic, 6th overall with 109 points, tied actually for 5th. 1, 2, 3, tied for the 4th highest points total with the Vancouver Canucks. Only the Panthers, Hurricanes, Stars, and Rangers had more points. A point percentage of .665. Their goal differential is plus 43, which isn't as impressive as some of these other teams, but still a very successful season in my mind. Yes, it would have been nice to win the Atlantic. Yes, it would have been nice to win 10 in a row going into the playoffs. But like I said on Twitter this morning, I'm not too bothered about how they finished the season because, let's be honest, they were not going to go all out in games that essentially meant nothing. They knew they were going to get Tampa. They knew they were going to get Toronto. In the end, they avoided Tampa, who's given them much more trouble this season than the Maple Leafs. So perhaps it worked out for the best in the end. I know there's a lot of Bruins fans out there who say, who gives a crap about the regular season anyways? All that matters is what happens beyond game 82. You can have all the success in the regular season. If they don't win the cup, it doesn't mean anything. And I mean, there is some truth to that. The pinnacle for hockey players, hockey fans, is winning the Stanley Cup. But it's also about the journey as much as the destination, if not more. And what's the point of having watched these 82 games if nothing matters within that scope? I have had a ton of fun watching the Bruins this season. They have blown me away by exceeding expectations, by excelling in the post-Bergeron era, and watching guys like, Jesper Boqvist come into his own. Watching Danton Heinen, who we'll talk about later, who I believe was robbed of the 7th Man Award. Watching Matt Poitras when he was healthy out there with that huge smile on his face. Watching this team come together as they have, led by David Pastrnak, the 2 centers, and the goaltenders, who we'll talk about here coming up. For me, this has been a successful season so far. The fact that they're in the playoffs, have a chance to compete for the cup, is a testament to the coaching staff, to the management, and a lot of these moves that Don Sweeney made last offseason to kind of fill the gaps, they paid off. And it was moves that he made a couple years ago and beyond that really paid off. And we'll discuss why the Bruins succeeded this season coming up here after the break. The other night, I went to see the Toronto Blue Jays host the New York Yankees at Rogers Center in Toronto, and I did so by using the Game Time app. The Game Time app is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, and they made getting tickets fast and easy. Prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have amazing last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and a lowest price guarantee. They take all the guesswork out of buying tickets for Major League Baseball. The views from your seat let me know exactly what to expect when I got to the ballpark, and their lowest price guarantee means they'll credit you 110% of the difference, and you find tickets in the same section and row for less. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code Locked On NHL for $20 off. That's Game Time, last minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. All right, the Bruins did lose their season finale last night against the Ottawa Senators. They fell to second in the Atlantic, and Brad Marchand afterwards, wasn't too bothered. He said, regardless of how it went and how they played, come playoff time, there's so much excitement and adrenaline. Guys are so dialed in that it would have been nice if they played better last night, but at the end of the day, they have the rest of the week to prepare, and they'll be excited to get going. For Jim Montgomery, he liked the fact that the Bruins played better as every period went on. Look, they played a Washington Capitals team that was desperate to make the playoffs. They played an Ottawa Senators team that was looking to, play spoiler, to finish strong, to make a good impression on management as they look to next season. They'll probably be making some changes. And again, at the end of the day, the Bruins got the better matchup on paper, Toronto over Tampa. Why were the Bruins so successful this season? Well, there's a few reasons I want to pinpoint. For one, you look at the center position. So many questions about losing Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, and whether or not Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle were up to the task of locking down the top two center positions. They passed that test with flying colors. In fact, they were more productive offensively than Bergeron and Krejci were last season. In 2022-23, Patrice Bergeron had 27 goals, 31 assists for 58 points. Charlie Coyle this season, 25 goals, 35 assists for 60 points, smashing career highs. Krejci had 16 goals, 40 assists for 56 points. Pavel Zacha had 21 goals, 38 assists for a new career high of 59 points. Those guys stepped up, and, while it would have been nice to have Zacha and Coyle in more depth roles, ideally, they thrived there last year as well. These guys stepped up, and I can't say enough about how important their performances have been this season. Coyle, Zacha playing heavy minutes, big minutes, defensive minutes against top competition, and they not only helped the Bruins defensively. The Bruins allowed only 224 goals this season, which is the sixth fewest around the NHL, but they also did more than their share offensively, recording career highs respectively in points. So huge shout out to Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha. Hopefully they can keep it going in the postseason. Now, the other huge factor for the Bruins, of course, is goaltending. At 5-on-5 this season, they had the third-ranked goaltending with a save percentage of 92.97, just a hair behind the Florida Panthers, who are at an even 93%, and the Winnipeg Jets at 93.67%. If you kick that up to all strengths, the Bruins finish third as well, 91.18 behind the Panthers and the Jets. The tandem of Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman, without them, the Bruins would not be where they are, quite just straight up. If you look at last night's opponent in the Ottawa Senators, their save percentage this season was ranked 31st in the NHL. If they got even league average goaltending, they're probably a playoff team. If the Bruins got league average goaltending, they're a bubble team at best. The fact that they got elite goaltending night in and night out, for the most part, put them in a position to succeed this season. The Florida Panthers, just a shade better when it comes to goaltending, and that's one of the reasons why they're tops in the Atlantic as well. Let's not kid ourselves. To finish 1 point behind Florida, we saw what Florida did last year. They squeaked into the playoffs. They took out what was a juggernaut in last year's Bruins. They went all the way to the Stanley Cup final, and that was a year after winning the President's Trophy. So to finish 1 point back of Florida when they're seemingly a team that rebounded and was on the rise, they're younger. They're a very, very good team. The Bruins lost a bunch of players, seemingly on the decline. They're still right up there, and goaltending is a huge reason why. And of course, we cannot not mention our boy David Pastrnak. Yes, he fell short of 50 goals, but he's currently 5th in the NHL in total points, 3 up on Austin Matthews, although the Maple Leafs do have 1 game remaining in which he'll try to hit 70 goals. But Pastrnak played a full 82 games, 47 goals, 110 points, and he set a new career high in assists with 63. And that maybe is more impressive for me. He was 3 back of his career high last season, but to get 110 points, not just buoyed by playing with Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand, that narrative is gone. He is a playmaker. He's a driver. He had 63 assists this season, which tells you that he is a playmaker as well as a shot maker, a difference maker, and just a fantastic performance this season for David Pastrnak. Now, he won't be in the conversation for Hart Trophy, but I think he should be, because you look at what he accomplished without help from, playing with Bergeron, playing with Krejci, and just the fact that he has stepped up as a leader. The next closest Bruin in scoring is a lot further down than usual. If you look at the scoring race, you have Pastrnak in 5th. Marchand is next at 67 points. He's down in 69th. Even Nikita Kucherov, who is first in scoring, 142 points. The next closest, Lightning, is 18th in scoring. So there's a huge gap between first and second on the Bruins, much more than Kucherov and his teammates. In fact, he's got Braden Point up there, Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, Brandon Hagel, all ahead of Brad Marchand in scoring. If you look at, Colorado, Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen. Connor McDavid has Leon Draisaitl and Evan Bouchard. Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, John Tavares is even up there as well. So David Pastrnak, an all-world performance, and those are the 3 main reasons. There's a lot of reasons why the Bruins succeeded this season, but on the ice, the top 2 centers, the top 2 goalies, and David Pastrnak, that's the reason why the Bruins succeeded this season. And whether or not they make changes, add down the middle, I still see them doing that this offseason. Maybe they move Linus Ullmark, but for now, that's the heart of this team and the reason why they finished second in the Atlantic. All right, we're going to wrap up by discussing some NESN news and notes, including the retirement of Jack Edwards, the 7th Player Award, and we'll get to those here as the podcast continues. All right, so I've been told I have a bit of a competitive side, and let's be honest, we all do in some respects. My competitive side is a huge fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you can play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. And the best part, though, is messing with my friends and family. I can charge them rent on iconic properties. I can rob their vaults of riches from myself. And the leaderboards show me who's the biggest Monopoly tycoon. It's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, there was some sad news yesterday around the Bruins, and that is the announcement that Jack Edwards, after 19 years as the Bruins play-by-play broadcaster, is retiring following the 2023-24 postseason games on NESN. Jack, he's been the voice of this team through this golden era, and, love him or hate him, you can't deny that he has put Boston's broadcasts on the radar and made them much more entertaining. Now, for me, I didn't get a chance to watch him that much until the last several years when you could choose your feed on the Game Time or the NHL Game Live. Watch it on the Sportsnet app up here. He's got unique phrases. I'm a huge fan of the tumbling muffin, and his iconic style has set him apart. And he's going to be missed. Congratulations to Jack on a remarkable career calling Bruins games on NESN. He brought a distinctive voice, colorful personality to the broadcast, and the Bruins honored him last night with a pregame ceremony, and they will do more next season to recognize him. More information will be shared later on, but Jack said he retires not with a heavy heart, but gratefulness. And we all know the health issues that he's had over the past couple of years, and some of the struggles he's had in the booth through that. But you can't deny that he has had such a huge impact on the hockey world, for better or worse sometimes. And he owns it as well. He makes no bones about being outspoken, being a colorful guy, and he'll be missed. Now we'll see who replaces him on the NESN broadcasts. There's rumors out there that perhaps John Forsland will come via Seattle, which would be pretty cool. But we wish Jack all the best, and we'll soak in these last games that he's calling here, I guess, through the first round. Now, speaking of NESN, they did announce the 7th Player Award, which is presented following a fan vote to the Bruin who exceeded expectations of fans during the season. And the award went to Trent Frederic. 26-year-old appeared in 81 games, career highs in goals with 18, assists with 22, and points with 40. Now, that's all well and good, but for me, I expected Trent Frederic to take another step this season. Last year he had a very good season. He was emerging as more of a driver offensively. He improved his point total by 9 points over last season. But that's kind of what you expect from a guy who, was trending upwards and who had been rewarded with a new contract last season or at the end of last season. He's making $2.3 million, 40 points. Yeah, that kind of lands with expectations. For me, as I had argued several weeks ago, it was Danton Heinen. It has to be Danton Heinen. 28 years old, came in on a PTO. He started the season without a contract. There were literally zero expectations for Danton Heinen coming into this season. He plays above Frederic in the lineup. 74 games, 17 goals, 39 assists, 17 goals, one back of Trent Frederic. Again, making $775,000, 17 goals, 19 assists, 36 points, and he's currently playing in the Bruins' top 6. If that isn't the definition of exceeding expectations, then I don't know what is. No disrespect intended to Frederic. He's had a great year. He's exceeded my expectations kind of overall as developing into a player, but it has to be Heinen. And in my mind, he was robbed. But, I mean, at the end of the day, doesn't really mean much. So, the Bruins finished second. They lose 3 of 4 to close out the season, failed to clinch the Atlantic. But it was kind of a tough schedule there to end things. They were playing teams that were pretty desperate. They beat the Penguins and kept them out of the playoffs. They lose to the Hurricanes, which is understandable. They're a good team. The Capitals, you would have liked to have seen them win last night to finish the season on home ice. But again, clearly they're not going to go all out in this one. They did have 35 shots, including 23 in the third period. So they didn't just curl up. But Anton Forsberg had a fantastic game, 34 saves on 35 shots. The Bruins turned it on in the third. They were trying to get those 2 points, trying to finish first. Didn't work out, and they may have gotten the better playoff matchup as a result. And of course, over the next couple days, we will preview the first round matchup with the Maple Leafs, get you all the latest when it comes to the schedule, who's in, who's out. I talked about Brandon Carlo yesterday. He's going to be ready for game 1. We'll talk about what the ideal playoff lineup will be, the goalie rotation, all that coming up on Locked On Boston Bruins, because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we talk about this team every single day. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here soon on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day.